Hello, I'm Maria Burns Ortiz, Executive Director of the Global Game Jam. We are so excited to have you joining us today as we kick off the next great IP Game Jam with the World Intellectual Property Organization. If you're not familiar with WIPO, it is a specialized United Nations agency that serves the world's innovators and creators, ensuring their ideas enter safely to the market and improve lives everywhere. They do this by providing services that enable creators, innovators, and entrepreneurs to promote and protect their intellectual property across borders, acting as a forum for addressing cutting edge IP issues. Their IP data and information guide decision makers around the world, and their impact driven products and technical assistance ensure IP benefits everyone, everywhere. And that includes video games. In the next hour and over the course of this upcoming jam, you're going to hear from experts around the world as to why that is so important. But to formally kick things off, we have a message from Todd Reeves, the director of WIPO's Building Respect for IP division.
Greetings to all the jammers joining us from around the world. I'm Todd Reeves, Director at the World Intellectual Property Organization, where I lead the area responsible for WIPO's IP and Youth Empowerment Strategy, or IPS, among a few other areas. It's truly exciting to be here today as we kick off WIPO's first ever Game Jam. And to be doing it with veterans in the field, our friends at the Global Game Jam, is icing on the proverbial cake. I'm thrilled to be joining this amazing community of creators, dreamers, and innovators. We all remember that first game that got us hooked. For me, it was Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! On an old Nintendo console. I can still picture those 8-bit graphics and that mix of frustration and joy when you finally land that knockout punch, sending the bald bull to the mat. What's amazing is that decades later, people are still talking about that game. That's the longevity of intellectual property, the magic of a creative idea that keeps giving long after it was first made. Today, some games live on for 10, 20, even 30 years. Old titles are being revived, remastered, and turned into major business ventures. That's not luck, that's IP at work. In the world of gaming, IP is crucial for creativity and innovation. As game developers, you pour your hearts into building new worlds, designing characters, crafting stories, and writing music. But what happens when someone tries to copy your idea, your code, or your art? That's when intellectual property rights come in. They protect your innovation and creativity and ensure you, not someone else, reap the rewards of your hard work. Throughout this game jam, you'll not only build amazing games, you'll also get a crash course in how to protect what you create through IP, how to profit from it, and how to think like both a creator and an entrepreneur. And don't underestimate that. It can be the difference between $1 million opportunity and $1 million mistake. Or we could be talking billions. Back in 1982, a former Apple exec named Trip Hawkins had one bold idea, that video games were art. From a tiny Silicon Valley startup called Electronic Arts, a few dreamers built something massive. EA burst onto the scene with hits like Madden NFL, turned developers into rock stars, and changed how games were made and sold. From scrappy startup to billion-dollar powerhouse, EA didn't just play the game, it rewrote it. Oh, and by the way, EA just reached a $55 billion deal with a group of investors to return to its roots of being a privately held company. Not bad for a startup with a visionary founder who saw games as art and the critical need to protect that art using the power of IP. And there's a flip side to success stories like EA's. Here's something we're seeing more and more in the industry. Major companies are increasingly buying the IP assets of indie game developers, streaming rights, and entire universes. And that's great. It shows how important creative work in the gaming industry has become. We've seen this with games like Minecraft, which started as a small indie project and was later acquired by Microsoft for $2.5 billion. This shows just how valuable original work in the gaming industry can be. One great idea, protected and managed well, can grow from a small indie project into a global franchise. We want to teach you to keep your IP house in order, how to register, protect, and manage your rights so that if you ever sell or license your work, you do it on your terms. Owning your IP gives you leverage, it gives you freedom, It turns your creativity into a real business tool. Now, some of you might be wondering, wait, what's WIPO doing in a game jam? Well, this is exactly what our IP Youth Empowerment Strategy, or IPS, is all about. Bringing IP closer to youth in space that actually makes sense in your world. Because IP just isn't about paperwork or legal jargon, although that's kind of fun too. It's about empowerment. Whether you're coding, designing, writing, or composing, IP protects your story, your brand, your universe. It's what helps you own your work and turn your passion into a venture. So to all of you taking part, congratulations for showing up. You've already done something remarkable. You've bet on yourself. This isn't just another jam. This is one where you'll learn how to protect your ideas, collaborate, innovate, and maybe, just maybe, build the next great gaming franchise. We at WIPO are honored to be part of your journey. We can't wait to see what worlds you build, what stories you tell, and how you'll use IP to take your creativity to the next level. So let's get started, have fun, and make something unforgettable. Thank you, and happy jamming.
So, like Todd said, from a small project to the next great gaming franchise, we are so excited. The theme of the next great IP Game Jam is to create a concept that could become a franchise. And we will get to what we're looking for in the second half of this session. But we thought we should first start out by exploring what is IP anyway. And to do that, we're joined by two of WIPO's experts on the topic. Rizard Freilich, counselor in the External Relations Division at the World Intellectual Property Organization, and Margarita, who I know will be up here with us in a minute, Margarita Marini, the IP commercialization specialist of the World Intellectual Property Organization. And I know Felix is going to join us here in a minute, too, to talk about it from the Global Game Jam perspective. But Rizard and Margarita, we will turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Maria. If I could kindly ask for pulling up the presentation. Perfect. So thank you very much, Maria, and thank you very much, everyone, for being here with us. A very good morning, a very good afternoon, and a very good evening to all of you. It's really a great pleasure to be here with Todd, Maria, Margarita, and Felix to speak about one of my favorite areas of intellectual property, which is video games. Why is it personally great for me is because basically video games are the reason I got into intellectual property. Some 25 years ago, I was playing a lot, one of my favorite online games at that time, which involved chasing quite a lot of monsters and gathering a lot of loot. And one day, unfortunately, someone hacked my account and stole all of my virtual equipment. At that time, I did not decide to go to the police station and tell them that someone stole my virtual swords and armor, but I did decide to look into it myself, and I read the EULA of the game I was playing, and I found for the first time the paragraphs related to intellectual property. Here I am 25 years later working for WIPO, where also together with Margarita, we coordinated an international project for helping video games developers across the world understand how they can use IP for their success. And finally, as I always like to laugh about it and recall, one of the best things of being in IP and video games is that finally at home, when being at home and playing a video game, I can say that this is for work. Now, in the next 20 minutes or so, together with Margarita, we would like you to stay a while and listen while we, one, explain why video game development is, in essence, an amazing quest for intellectual property. Two, give you some really very practical first IP tips. Three, show you where you can find even more information, more IP tips for game development. We want to keep it useful, so no lectures on legal provisions, no dates, no paragraph numbers for those legal egos out there. So let's perhaps start with the first basic thing, is that IP is at the heart of each video game, and every video game is a multiverse of intellectual property. because games are, of course, packed with creativity and innovation. From the code of the software to the design of the characters, from the music and the voice acting to branding and marketing, from storytelling and innovative gameplay to the hardware, of course, that shapes the gaming experience. All of this is protected and enabled by IP, ranging from copyright, trademarks, trade secrets, designs, to even patents. Just look at this next slide. So basically, almost every component of a video game can be protected by various intellectual property IP rights. The two most commonly used would be most likely copyright and trademarks. So copyright is everywhere. It protects anything original from the software to any of the audiovisual elements of the video game, the text, the audio, the cinematics, the characters, and sometimes even the entire world, the universe created within the video game. And copyright doesn't require any formalities in the vast majority of the places of the world, so you automatically get protection. No payment and no filling is also required. The second big one is trademarks. So trademarks protect the brands, and it's not only limited to the name of the company or the name of the video game. This sign, the symbol, can be anything that is distinctive within the video game: a character, a weapon, a sound. They all can be potentially protected by a trademark. But of course, a trademark is not automatic, and it requires registration and payments. Let's perhaps also add here that patents, because often people think patents is IP is only about patents, but patents are exclusive rights to inventions, and they also require an application and are not limited to the hardware itself. The mechanical aspects of the video game could also be covered, as it also protects inventions of software, and to some extent, of course, with huge differences between regions and systems, also the game mechanics. Besides copyright, trademarks, and patents, you will also have the designs, trade secrets, and image rights. In some cases, even selected assets can be protected by various IP rights. For example, an original symbol could be protected by both copyright or trademarks. So this already is really quite a lot. But then for the final blow, IP is territorial, which means that all these different rights to all these different assets will be protected separately by laws of each country. While there is, of course, some international harmonization, each trademarks, each patent, each copyrighted work will be protected according to the country's laws, which have each country's laws, which have their, of course, differences. Taking into account that games are often global in nature, at this point is that some of the game developers might look like this when thinking about intellectual property. In the end, of course, then they might just ignore it, and at the very last moment, they could contact the lawyers, which often, by the way, is going to be too late. At the same time, of course, acknowledging that there will be many points that when you're developing a game, especially, for example, signing contract, it is essential that you will understand every word that is inside, and you might, of course, at that time need to contact the lawyers. But before even doing that, there are a few things a game developer can do that do not require complex legal knowledge. And these are not really very difficult things, actually very straightforward. And if game developers do them, they will avoid many of the biggest mistakes and lost opportunities. So how can a game developer level up their IP today? What advice can we give them right now? In WIPO, together with some of the best video game IP experts from across the world, we came up with an initiative that helps games developers navigate IP in a friendly and easy way. I will talk about the project itself, this initiative, a bit later on. Let's focus right now on the tips which we can provide to you today, right now, that can help you develop your game and protect your creativity and innovation. We divide this always within our initiative and also within this presentation into 5 different levels, which mostly follow the different game development stages. So level 1 during IP during concept phase, level 2 development phase, level 3 launch phase, level 4 investment, and then separately, of course, the level on IP and esports. So let's go through these different stages and give you some quick tips, focusing, especially, of course, since this is a game jam, specifically even more focusing on the concept phase and development phase. And this is the point where I would hand it over to Margarita, if Margarita is with us.
Just popping in here. Margareta, can you hear, or how is your microphone working? Just checking, because we seem to be having... Oh, there you are. Nice. We see now your camera. So I'm gonna leave off of here now.
All right. I think I'm connected. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Sorry. Usual technical issues as we try to stream for all of you all together. But thank you, Richard, for the introductions. We're going through a few levels, as Richard mentioned, and we're going to start thinking about practical elements of IP issues as you really develop and launch your game and you bring your game to market. So level 1, gather different teams, we think about the creative process, but this is the stage where it is most important to start to organize yourself and your portfolio. This is when you start put it in writing. The first tip is put it in writing, because this is when you start to clarify who are you working with, which type of agreements will allow you to bring back all the creations, all the IP that you're creating back to your venture as you go to market. These agreements often clarify the ownership of IP, as we saw that different IP rights may contribute to your game as you bring this game to market. This is important also because as you carry on with the development process, you will lose track of who contributed to this process in case a graphic designer leaves or a colleague moves on to another project. The second tip is to start keeping good records, because just as we were saying, the source, as you keep track, going back to the previous slide, sorry, Richard. As you're really developing, you keep good records of who is participating to the creative process and who is developing elements of your video game. Finally, you will start to analyze what are the elements that you really need to bring to market when you develop your game. This is where you start to analyze, do I really need to own the assets to protect these IP rights, or maybe can I just simply get permission? And trust me, it is much easier to get permission early when you are still young, a young venture without any pressure on launch or pressure on an investment deal. So start to get permission early. Moving on to level 2. This is where really things start to get interesting and you are moving forward in your development process, and you really want to make your game unique, and you start deciding what to invest on, because after all, IP is about investing in what really will bring value to your game. This is the time where you start building a team that is also responsible, and you raise awareness about how to keep track of your elements, checking if everyone is building characters or using designs, songs, or elements that are not borrowed from somebody else's space. And again, this is the time to check early to see if you want to use and include in your game already exists. A quick call also to navigate our WIPO databases, where you can track different trademarks, different elements of IP rights that have already been registered online, and check early, because this is the time where you can really identify what makes you special and unique. Finally, again, get permission early, because earlier negotiations allow you to make cheaper and more convenient deals for your game at the end of the day, as you are strategic and you update your protection. Update your protection while your video game develops. Moving on to level 3. This is really the stage where you are getting ready for launch. So things are getting real now. All your assets are finalized, and you will have to take a lot of business decisions. This is the time to really conduct almost like a risk assessment or a due diligence before you launch. And when you identify your risks, maybe the best strategy is really to follow almost like a method of a traffic light, and really identify what are the elements of your game that are completely safe. So green light, they are original creations from my team. The works, or maybe the works are in the public domain, so I already obtained permission to use them. And then there is maybe the orange part of the traffic light, where you have potential risks. Maybe you're using some open source software, and you can check online by doing a quick software audit if you can go to market with those software without obtaining additional licenses. Maybe you need to get permissions if you're using real people names or brands, or even historical buildings and characters from real life. And finally, the red part of the traffic light, really the elements where the risk is higher, and maybe you need additional legal advice before launch. This is the time, again, to identify your risks and close the gap so that you are ready for launch. And finally, evaluate your assets, because all of these elements, no matter in which color of the risk traffic light they are, they can really bring value to your game, and that's the time where you really think about your business plan. Are you going to use different cross platforms? Are you going to develop your game and later maybe transfer it to a book, to a TV series, or vice versa? So how do I really make money and monetize this opportunity of my game? Moving on to level 4. We have launched the game, and we are now ready to also discuss with potential partners, with potential investors, or maybe even buyers from these other platforms. Maybe if you want a big deal on a TV series. So how do I really get ready for these conversations? In this setting, knowledge of your IP is crucial. Obviously, you're never going to be a full IP lawyer, but buyers and investors are interested in seeing that you did your own homework. So the first tip is to really organize your IP portfolio. Be prepared to explain how you came up with these inventions, with these characters, with these elements of your game, who contributed to the invention, to the creation process, and remember to bring back all that documentation that you started tracking early. Second tip is explain how you approach IP. Maybe you have already included IP into your employment agreements, or you are managing information confidentially. Demonstrate really how you, not only as a video game developer, but also as a company, you're building a solid business plan as you go to market, as you go to launch. Because really they don't want to see that you're an IP lawyer, but most importantly, that you are prepared and organized. And finally, of course, check if you're compliant all the time before pitching to any investor. Check again all the risky elements of your game. If you've used any third party, any software or open source that requires an additional license. And remember, you can check online for example, software audit platforms that allow you to simplify this process online. Finally, level 5. This is a bit of a separate one. If you are working on esports, actually, is really to reflect on how to esports and any other niche area of video game is really reflecting on how to monetize IP. There are different ways that IP can contribute to your business plan, to your business model. How do you decide to drive revenue? There will be different models that allow you to do that. For example, you can run the leagues on your own, or perhaps you, if you're working again, if we use the example of esports, maybe you want to allow others from fans to commercial entities to create esports from your game. And maybe you can create a revenue model to allow that and to allow your venture to grow based on that. You can again consider multiple approaches that bring different revenue streams to your venture, to your video game development group. And finally, remember to protect your brand. Make it clear to not only your team internally, but also externally to any organizers, sponsors, investors, and teams that they can use, that your brand is strong and they can use your brand while by entering into any IP agreement. And I think in the next slide, my colleague Richard will show you how to find all of these materials and more to really level up your game by using IP. I know this is a lot of information, so I think we can only share additional resources that we have developed from WIPO so that you can really navigate and think about what's the best strategy to bring your game to market.
Thanks,
With that,
Margarita.
I hand over back to Richard.
Yes, thanks so much, Margarita. And I agree that on these topics, we could be speaking for hours and hours, and we would be doing it with a lot of interest and passion. But time is always short. So let me just give you a few points where you can find even more useful tips and information. So one being that first, you can of course visit our dedicated Level Up Your IP webpage, which we created at WIPO for this initiative where we were helping game developers across the world understand the basics of IP. Similarly, on this webpage, we also followed the 5 different levels that Margarita mentioned, and for each level, you will find these downloadable IP checklists that you can just put on your wall. And if you're at that stage of game development, just these are the basic things that it's worth really following when it comes to intellectual property. We also have podcast interviews with really great companies sharing their IP business tips, including from Konami, CD Projekt Red, Tencent, but also very successful and cool indie developers. And at the end of each of these interviews, we also have a 5 minutes lessons learned recap at the end that you can also get those tips in a condensed way. Also, you will have many, many other links on this web page to all the many other materials that we have at WIPO. This includes the Mastering the Game publication, and this covers everything you can imagine on legal and business aspects of video game development. If anyone wants to read the 400 pages, they are there, but you can always check in on some of the details. If you're more interested in a specific issue, you can easily find the replies to those in that big publication. We also have an interactive story about IP and the PlayStation available, of course, also from our webpage, a case study on IP and Cyberpunk 2077, and of course a number of recordings and articles, a number of recordings from past events, as well as articles in our WIPO, our magazine, on specific issues related to IP and video games. Let me also mention here that our IP and video game community is really, a big shout out to them, is really amazing. You will have an opportunity to see and talk to many of the greatest experts on IP through the workshops that are aligned here for the Game Jam that the Game Jam will host. So you'll be able to ask your many questions you might have on IP to get those specific replies. You can also, of course, join our LinkedIn community that we have, where we also share some of the recent insights on IP and video games. The links to everything can again be found on the webpage, which you will see at the end of my presentation. And because I think we already ran out of time and we need to finish, but allow me for a very little geek out moment that and refer to one of the quotes from one of the greatest games of all time. So it is dangerous to go alone. So take our tips to succeed in your quest for your next great IP. So please look at our materials, and please do take care of your intellectual property. And I thank you so much for your attention. And I think at this moment we are handing it over with Margarita to Maria.
Thank you both so much. I know that was like a speed run version of IP and all things IP, but as Rizard mentioned, we're going to have some more sessions getting a little bit deeper into that. But we're just a few minutes away from kind of going over and unveiling the criteria for the jam and the rubric we'll be using to assess it, as well as an opportunity to ask questions you might have. I know some of you have been asking them in the chat, so thank you so much. Feel free to post some more in there. But before we do that, we wanted to share why IP matters to GGJ and our community, and why we are so excited about the opportunity to partner with WIPO for this jam. And so for that, we have our resident GGJ expert on the subject, a member of our Global Game Jam Board of Directors and partner at Osborne Clark, Felix Hilgert.
Hello, thank you, Maria. So that was a great presentation, I thought, by Richard and Margarita, and I'm almost tempted to also geek out and talk about whether it's dangerous to go alone is copyright protected, but if it is, I'm pretty sure this is fair use for educational purposes. So yeah, so I'm Felix. I wear multiple hats here. One, I'm a video games lawyer, but also I'm on the board of the Global Game Jam, and so I'll be popping into answering your IP questions later on in the Q&A. But I also wanted to just kind of frame this discussion about why are we talking about this, because part of the mission of the Global Game Jam and part of the idea is, of course, to foster creativity, foster connections in the games industry, but also give people an opportunity to discover what it's like and to get their first kind of set of experiences as a game developer. And as the folks from WIPO have already kind of laid out, IP is a really important consideration. You want to start thinking about it right in the beginning of your creative process, so you don't make decisions early on that are going to then come and haunt you and bite you as you go along and as you're a developer. And I think especially in this day and age when the conversation about IP in games is influenced a lot by new technologies that are available. When you're using AI tools, what does that mean for your own IP? What does it mean about not infringing somebody else's IP? It's really important for developers to have that basic understanding of how IP law works, to just equip you with the tools to engage in that conversation and apply it to your own creativity and your own development projects. And so that's why at GGJ we think is a great opportunity to have a jam focused on IP, to almost make it an interactive tutorial about things that you need to know about IP law, about IP rights, if you are going to build a career or in the games industry, or if you're going to create a studio in the games industry. So I've seen a bunch of questions. I think most of them were about the how does the jam work? And for those questions, definitely that's something Maria can answer. She's going to go over kind of the rules and guidelines and framework for the jam, and then we will both be available for some of your questions. So if you have a specific question that hasn't been answered yet, please feel free to pop it in the chat, like Maria said.
Thank you, Felix. And yes, we're excited to tap your expertise here in a minute and get a little bit more. If we can pull up the slides, we are ready to, officially kick off the next great IP Game Jam. And here is what we are looking for from all of you amazing jammers out there. So I think first, we are looking for a great game, right? It's a jam. So we are not expecting perfection and polish. We are looking at potential and promise. And a great franchise transcends a game to become a globally recognized brand. So show us what that means. So there are a couple of different parts as we go. Here, there's a couple of different parts. The first set of criteria that we will have is going to be only visible. So the jam's going to be broken into two things. There's going to be some visible things that everyone can see, and there's going to be some things that only the reviewers for this will see. One of the things that we're looking for to start, and these are the parts that you will not see, or that the reviewers will not see. Sorry, I'm going to start over. This is the part that the reviewers will see and the public won't necessarily see. So we know that people worry about IP, they worry about protection, they worry about their ideas being out there. And so we're going to start with one of the things that we're asking you to do when we talk about franchises and what this means is characters and stories. So we were going to ask you as part of the game and things to be thinking about as we go through this is who are the main characters of your story, right? What defines your game and your world? What makes it memorable and distinctive? And is there something that really jumps out, right? What great IP has to do with great characters and great stories? So that's going to be a big part of what we're looking for as far as franchise worthy. And next, we're looking at branding, right? IP is about your brand. It's about this visual identity. What would you include as far as storytelling in the promotion and marketing of the game, right? And I think this is one of the things that we were so excited about this partnership is it's really fun to make games and it's really great and exciting and you have these stories and your characters. But then what do we do with them? Where do they go from there? Getting all of the participants to be thinking about these kind of ideas. How do you brand your game? And then thinking about all the things that later on come back and maybe are sometimes issues, right? Have you thought about trademarking it? Do you have a logo? I mean, some of the most recognizable games and brands, if you think of them, the first thing that pops to your mind is your logo, right? That is part of your IP. So what does that look like? And how are you thinking about that? And then next we have documenting ownership, right? IP is about intellectual property, right? Who owns that property? And so what records of your work do you have to prove the ownership? source files, concept docs, sketches, contracts, all of that. And then have you discussed that with your team? A lot of times what we hear from folks, and especially folks that come out of game jams, right, is like you get together, you're working on something, you got this project, and you haven't really had these conversations. So part of our hope with this jam is that we're getting all of you who are participating, all the jammers, to be thinking about ownership as part of that. And then the last criteria that we're going to have as far as what you're submitting to the judges, as looking at credits. So how do you credit the people who've worked on your game, right? How do we know who that ownership belongs to, that you've been documenting it, and how are we crediting that, right? How do you credit assets that you might have used, and are you sure that you can use them, right? The last thing you want is to have this really great, wonderful game, and then it turns out that you don't have access to all of the things that are in there, right? I mean, these are the headaches that if we think about it at the start of this process, at the GM process, then we can hopefully avoid, issues later on down the road. And so are the credits within your game? One of the things that we'll be looking for as part of the overall is making sure that those credits are there. And then making sure that's part of the build. And then kind of the publicly visible part. So that will go in, and I said, the part we were talking about there, we're not looking for essays. We're looking for like a sentence or two, right? Just thinking about these things. And that's the point of this GM, as much as creating the games and the ideas, is just kind of starting to help you all think through this process and what that looks like. And then for the public facing part of the GM, you will also be, and this will be visible with your game to everybody who wants to go and check out the really cool, amazing jam games that are going to come out of this. We're sure a list of elements, and I know Margarita, it was, and Rosario were talking about this, the list of elements of the game that you could use for merchandising and cross-media expansion, right? This idea of a franchise, not a game, but a game that could become a franchise, which is the theme of this jam. Of all those different little things, right? Is it graphic novels? Is it board games, TV shows, movies, toys, t-shirts, whatever you can envision? How does that fit with your game? How could you use different elements of your game to build that out? And then a 1-minute video. So I saw some questions about what needs to be submitted as far as gameplay. And again, this is a jam. And so we know, and it's one of those things like a concept, a franchise-worthy concept is a big thing, right? And we don't want any of you all to get overwhelmed thinking about, oh my goodness, we're going to expect you to come up with the next, Super Mario Brothers, franchise. I mean, if you do, great. Make sure that you, in the credit this jam as part of the inspiration for that. Maybe if you, but we're not looking for something huge and perfect and polished. It's, it's a game jam. So we want you to be creating something that's for a game jam. Sometimes we run into issues too, where people have issues downloading games, things like that. So, if your game is web playable, great. Don't worry. You don't have to create a video, but we want to make sure that even if your game, if there's any hiccups, if there's any headaches, if there's any issues getting it downloaded, that we can see what your game looked like as is, right? So if you have a non-web playable game, please make sure that you also can create this video ideally so that they can see what the gameplay looks like when folks are reviewing your game. It's not a trailer. We're not asking for a demo, nothing super polished. We're not going to, again, we're not basing your game on this idea of perfection, right? We just want to see, what does your game look like? What does that come through? And if you do have a web playable game, that's great too. The video is optional. Feel free to submit that as part of it. And for the game format, it can be any kind of game. You can develop as a computer game, and you could do something for console if you want. You could do mobile. There's not any set format that it has to be. And that's why we want to make sure that everybody can access every game that you have. So the rubric will break down as this: theme. And the theme is, like I said, creating a game that could be a franchise. And if you look on the GM site now, we have an expanded rubric that will have all of the different questions and things that people will be thinking about as they're going through and assessing your games. But a lot of them kind of actually tie in very much to the IP elements in general, right? Like, what is the story? What is the potential for this to be a franchise? Building that out. So theme there, the IP elements. So the things that I just talked about that the reviewers will look at that won't be visible to the public, but the questions that we're asking, like, how are you crediting? How have you documented your property, your ownership, the brand piece, right? The story and the universe, that'll kind of fall under the 20. So about 70% of it will be with that. And then 30% will be the gameplay. And like I said, we're excited to see what you have. I know some people have asked, can they submit games that are already in progress, and that's fine too. And just know, though, you can create something completely from scratch. We can't have games that have been launched and that are commercially available, but if it's a project you've been working on, that's all right. But we're going to judge games based, like I said, in part on the promise and the potential. So don't feel like, oh, I'm just starting something now, I'm at a disadvantage. Really, we're looking for creativity. We're looking for ideas. We're looking for things that could become the next big franchise. So the next great IP. And so I will bring it up. We'll ask, with that, I will ask to bring back the rest of the folks here, and we will tackle some of your questions as we go through, and feel free to put some in here or go from there. I will say, hopefully I did a little bit address the question of what stage does the game need to be at? Does it need to be fully playable? Does it need to be a demo? This is a jam. So we're looking for jam games. It's not supposed to be something perfect and polished, and just really pushing you to think about this idea of next great franchise. So
I see a ton of, how do you want to, do you want to read us the questions, or should we just
if you saw any that you really liked? Otherwise, I can pull some through here for you. You all, if you saw any you love, let me know. Otherwise, I will just start going.
I saw a lot of them that I love, because a lot of them are absolutely excellent questions, and they touch on really great points on the IP side of things. Maybe I'll start with the most recent one there, because it's so topical about AI. So the question is, can we make assets with the help of AI tools and get IP for them? And as you can imagine, if you ask a bunch of lawyers, the initial answer is always going to be, it depends. I'm curious to see if Richard has a different view on this. But so one of the things I'll point you back to is something that was said in the WIPO presentation earlier, which is IP laws are territorial. So basically, you don't get one copyright for your game worldwide. You get a bunch of, it's like a bouquet of flowers. For each country, you have one copyright. And so the answer could be a little bit different in different countries. But kind of in both in the US and in Europe, as kind of some very important markets, and more importantly, ones that I know anything about. I don't know how this works in Asia so much. Maybe Richard knows something about that. But in both those kind of areas of the world, something that is entirely created by an AI tool is not copyright protectable. You might be able to file a trademark, but the protection of a trademark is typically for the name or the logo of a game, but it's not for the entire thing. The entire thing is most often and most comprehensively protected by copyright, and there is no copyright on things that are entirely machine created. But you can create a draft of something or generate an idea for something using AI tools, and then take whatever that output is and modify it and tweak it and improve it and finish it. And then the more you add to it, the more you change the output of the AI tool, the more likely it is that you will then have a copyright in the final outcome. So what we tell our clients very often is to say, well, if you're going to use an AI tool to iterate on a texture in the background of your game, so not all the trees in the background look the same and it's a little bit more visually interesting, that's probably a low risk a low risk use case. If you're going to use AI to create the look of your main character of your game, that's more risky because you might then not fully have the copyright in that. So if you're going to use an AI tool for something that you care about and you want to protect for yourself, then use it to ideate, use it to draft, but don't use something that comes out of it and just use that as the final product. That would be my recommendation.
I think you covered it perfectly, Felix. And I love the comparison to the bouquet of flowers that you have across the world, because of course now this is an issue that of course is in front of the many courts across the world, which are exactly trying to tackle these questions. But one thing what might just highlighting exactly what also Felix said, that of course what is always important when you are thinking of a franchise is that you have the original copyright to your work. Because of course, for example, think of an original character that you have created, then that character could of course be used for monetizing, for example, for merchandising or including it in a TV show. So it is important that you do own the copyright to that character. So of course, when using AI, there are certain risks related to, exactly because it's still an unknown, there are certain risks related to if that character could be protected by copyright. So here, this is just from my side, but Felix, I think, covered this really very well.
Perfect. Well, I know there's a couple questions here about kind of the stage of it. And so somebody said, can we use systems like Twine? I mean, you can use whatever you want, as long as, it's a system that you can create and launch a game on and have the rights to. So that's relatively fine with us. In terms of, can the video, does it have to be an engine? I think, like I said, we will be judging the gameplay part for 30%. So the more, if you show that you have the gameplay, that will help you in that 30%. But I'd say, I think one of the things we're really looking for in this is the ideas, right? And I think that's a big part of it. We do want to see, ideally, if you have a game, and that will be part of it. But I think, we'd love to participate, submit what you have, and we'll look forward to seeing all of that, I think. Yeah, and it doesn't have to, like I said, it can be, we're looking at what the ideas are as much as anything. And the gameplay, we want to see a game, but whatever you have. A question here is, does IP protect the mechanics of an electronic game? I guess, is that, and if the person here wants to ask, is it kind of about the actual gameplay itself? And I know there was one here too about if you can maybe more also merging that with talk about protecting code as far as IP. Is that something that people should be thinking about, and how do they go about that?
Felix?
Happy to go first on that. So again, an it depends answer. So you may have seen very recently, there was news about Nintendo getting a patent for a gameplay mechanic where you summon a sub-character. And there's been lots of discussion about that. So I'm not a patent lawyer by any stretch. So I'm more on the soft IP side. But for patents in particular, it's important to keep in mind that, again, we were talking about this bouquet of flowers situation, where in some jurisdictions, you can potentially get a patent for these gameplay mechanics, typically in the US and in Japan, although just because the patent was issued doesn't mean it would survive a court challenge. So this is only the first part of the analysis. So it could get quite complicated. In other jurisdictions, like in Europe, it would be incredibly challenging to get a patent for this kind of gameplay mechanic. And it would be even harder for that to survive a court challenge. So that is not really kind of the best tool that you should be thinking about, in particular if you're an indie, because obtaining a patent is very expensive and costs a lot of time. So that's probably not what you want to be looking at. There is a limited amount of protection under other IP rights for gameplay mechanics. So if your mechanics are really unusual, really new, something that hasn't been there before, there's an argument to be made that they might be copyright protected, but it's a very case-by-case analysis. So it's very hard to say, if you do this, it'll be protected. If you do that, it won't. I mean, I can say if you do a match 3 game, that mechanic is not copyright protected. That's pretty clear. But if you do a match 3 game where your elements are all like different types of candies, we're getting somewhere where maybe that reminds you of something that you've played before. And if you pick, you know, the same colors of the jelly bean and the same color of the little chocolates, and it kind of, the more similar it gets, the more then it's not just the mechanic, it's kind of, it becomes a copycat game, and then you get into the territory of where that might be infringing. Or if you look at it from the other perspective, once you combine your mechanic with a very distinctive way of expressing it, then you start getting into the territory where it's a copyright. But the difficulty with these clone games is very often that they use gameplay elements that have been used before a number of times, and that you just can't copyright because they're not sufficiently creative and distinctive and new, that they would be that they would kind of cross that bar of that threshold of protection. So gameplay protection only for very unique, very very new and creative ways. If you just combine a lot of different mechanics that have existed before, it's much less likely it'll be protected.
If I just can add to that, referring again, I love the comparison of the bouquet of flowers. I have to remember this one, but referring, if it's the IP across the world, different countries, is the bouquet of flowers. So your garden tools, in this case, as a small developer, will be especially copyright, trade secrets, and trademarks. Patents, of course, if you have an amazing, innovative idea, it's always good practice then to go and consult with a patent attorney, for example, or an IP lawyer. But your main 3 tools will be mostly copyright, trade secrets, and trademarks. And what is important always to remember for copyright in itself, copyright does not protect ideas. It protects the creative expression. So here, this is just something to keep in mind. But yes, there are of course companies, and even not the biggest companies, that have obtained historically, they have obtained also patents for very innovative gameplay, mostly, as Felix also mentioned, for example, in the US or Japan.
And I know,
sorry, there was one other aspect of the question that I realized I didn't really talk about very much in my answer, but just to confirm, protection for code. So the software code, unless it is 100% the output of some AI model, see above, is automatically protected in the jurisdictions that I know about, which is the US and Europe. In the US, it is possible to register works for copyright. That's a bit of a unique process, and you need to do that if you want to sue someone for infringing it. But even if you haven't registered it yet, it's still protected. And in Europe, you have 0 registration process. So the minute you code something, as long as that code reaches the threshold of being sufficiently creative and not completely banal, it will have copyright protection. So that's automatic.
1 minute of adding.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, because of course, so just also mentioning, so also under WIPO is administering many international intellectual property treaties, and one of them is the main treaty that has created the basics of copyright, which the vast majority of countries of the world are members of that treaty, and that also translates that for copyright, it's being granted automatically. So you do not have to register these rights anywhere in order for it to be protected. But of course, there exist systems in different countries, in Europe as well. For example, in Romania, I know of, that in some of the copyright offices, you can, of course, register your copyright, but this is more for the purposes of proof of having in front of, if it goes to court, for example, that you have proof that you are the author of these works. But yes, this is it's sometimes good also, of course, practice to have these kind of things registered just in case, but it is not a requirement for it to be protected in general in vast majority of countries.
Well, perfect. Well, I know we are almost at the hour, so just a couple of things to kind of reiterate what I have seen in here. Yeah, so the theme is create a franchise-worthy game, right? So it's whatever franchise is going to look like to you, whatever you think that is, create that. platform, we're platform agnostic. If it's something that runs on the web, you don't need a video. If it's not going to be something that can run on the web, include a short video so we can see what that game looks like and be able to make sure that, and obviously still upload your game. If you have a game, a build of a game, please upload it. We will, be playing through those games as well, but just as a backup, feel free to upload the video. And then a couple other things as these two were talking, I know some of us we're not always an expert in this space. Well, the great news is we have multiple sessions coming up. And honestly, I'm excited about this, and it's funny to be like, I'm excited about IP, but it's what's really exciting about this. And I think our goal is to make IP fun and accessible and make it so that you all understand the importance of it. And we have literally IP experts from around the world, from Singapore, Australia, Poland, Czech Republic, US, Brazil, South Africa, the UK, Italy, that will be taking part in these upcoming sessions, India. And so really our goal is to see as many folks and many perspectives as we can, because I think one of the things that, Rosario was talking about and with WIPO is that they're doing so many different projects around the world and so many different things. And so our goal is how can we really, as Global Game Jam, bring that global perspective to it for all of you. And so we will have sessions. Next Wednesday is IP mistakes too many indies make and how to avoid them. So save yourself a lot of headache, a lot of trouble, and honestly, money, because we've got some really great experts who are not your lawyers, they will say, but they have insights into some of these legal processes and things that you should be doing and things that they've seen people do that they hope that you don't do. And then we have another session, Getting IP Right, on October 16th on Thursday. And so our goal too with these sessions, one of them is going to be, they're very different. So our goals between those two sessions, wherever you are in the world, you will be able to hopefully attend one. They will not land at 2 a.m, wherever you are. And you say, I wish that I was able to attend it. And then October 22nd, I think this is a really exciting one, is IP in the age of AI. So what these two were talking about, we'll have an entire session on that. If you can't make the sessions live, they will be recorded so that you can watch them. And you can also register. And even if you can't make it, you can submit questions in the registration form so that we can ask them for the panelists. If you're there, and everything is up on the itch page. If you go to that if you've signed up for this session, it will be there. Otherwise, if you go to the Next Great IP Game Jam on itch.io, if you go to the Global Game Jam site, you'll be able to find it. Basically, we have it lots of places. So if you can't find it, you didn't go to our website, at least globalgamejam.org, and we'll have it there. And so you guys, so everybody here, we are super excited to see that the games that you create and where we go from then. And if you have questions, we have FAQs on the site. The rubric is there, and you can always send a message either via Discord. We have a Discord channel that is there and active, or reach out to us at Global Game Jam through the contact information that we have, and we will answer your questions about this jam and have the experts. We at Global Game Jam will answer the questions about the jam, and the experts on the webinars will answer your questions about IP. So we are super excited to have you all. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, this morning, this afternoon, depending on where you are. And I guess the jam is now officially kicked off. So thanks so much, everyone, for attending. All right.
Cheers.
Yeah, bye.
Cheers, everyone. Bye.